Sure.
I think we announced
It
the
is
start.
recording after all the introductions.
Yeah.
But that's all right. Okay, that concludes
Okay.
the introduction. Thank you.
Right. The next order of business is to approve the April 9, 2020 meeting minutes. We didn't have those available for the last meeting, and the April 13, 2020 meeting minutes.
Motion to approve?
Yeah.
Second.
Second.
Right?
Hal, I knew you were going to be quick to the draw, so I tried.
All right. It's
You're pretty quick yourself there, PJ.
it's
that
been
Jack?
moved and seconded. All in favor? Aye. Please raise your hand.
Aye.
Opposed? Any opposed? I hear none, and so we'll accept them. So I'll turn this back to Mike Toll for the discussion of the Economic Development District federal designation. Update
You actually have another set of minutes to approve.
Oh, I'm sorry.
There's the August minutes. So that was the April minutes. We also have
Okay,
the
I
August
kind of
minutes.
lumped them together. I apologize for that. But, somebody make a
They
motion.
look okay to me. I'll make that motion.
Second?
Second.
PJ.
All right. It's been moved and seconded that we accept the, approve the August 13, 2020 meeting minutes of the Development District. All in favor? Aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Fun.
Opposed? Hear none? All right. Thank you. I deem those approved as well. Now we'll turn to Mike will update us on the grants update based on our federal designation.
Yes. So we got our EDD designation, which I keep celebrating over and over again. And since then, we've been putting together grant applications to apply to get funding so we can get consistent funding every year. And ideally, the way I imagine it to play out is we'll have a dedicated staff member who is working on economic development for West Cog region as their main priority. I've been keeping this afloat, hosting the meetings and kind of doing what I can. But to have somebody dedicated to updating the SEDS, working with all the members in WCEDD, working with our municipalities, understand their economic needs, that's what this money would help fund. So this is for the EDA planning grant program. It's more complicated than I initially intended or I had in mind. It is a very intensive grant application through the EDA. So we have currently not yet applied. We did track down a grant, which is an application we found from a previous agency that both Francis and I worked in CCRPA in Central Connecticut. They applied with the same grant and won it. So we're using that as a model to build our own. We do have a lot of language and stuff to build the grant out. So we're feeling confident about the grant. We think we can probably give out $70,000 to $80,000. That's the typical amount they award. And other activities that they might do for the region and in concert with WCDD is to identify grants that they can apply for to get more money into the region, to update the SEDS. They might be looking into brownfield opportunities. I'll talk about that more later. That's a potential activity they might do. And I think it's also well timed. If we can get this grant money, we're going to be looking at some serious economic recovery activity in the region, throughout across the country. So to have a staff member thinking about this regionally, working very closely with WCEDD in our towns, I think that would be very powerful. So that's kind of where we stand with the grant. We're putting the application together, and we hope to get about $70,000 to $80,000 in that process. For that
Can I ask a question on that, Mike?
Yeah, certainly, Hal.
Yeah. Just wondering how long it takes, once you apply for a grant, what's the normal wait time before you know whether you have it or not?
Yeah,
Or is there one?
Right. So, different grants move at different speeds. So this one I think would probably take months to accomplish, maybe like 4 to 6 months. But I'm not sure how the EDA is functioning at this time. A lot of departments have been acting kind of different. Their timetables have been changing. So that's my estimate now. But once we start getting the application out, we can start communicating more with the EDA to get some better idea of when it'll be ready.
Thank you.
Sure thing. Any other questions before I jump to the next grant? Okay. The other grant that we're applying for is the EDA CARES Act Recovery Assistance. It's actually, we have applied for it. Francis has put together a letter and has argued for some funding that we should go pursue. Last time we were at the meeting, I talked about this grant. There was a question about what will we target for with these grant funds? And at the time, we were keeping it kind of open-ended. They actually requested that we have more detail. And Francis put together a letter that provides some more detail. Francis, I have the bullet points here. Do you want to walk through what the letter included and some of the details behind it?
Sure. If I could just find the letter I sent. Mike, where is it? You know?
Yeah, it's going to be in.
Yes, I don't have it open.
All right, I can bring up. I have the bullet points here. I'll read them off for you.
I don't top of my head, but I can say that they gave us 1 day to provide additional detail. So they are looking to move this money off the books quite quickly and get information. So unfortunately, we didn't have time to consult with everybody because they gave us 1 day.
Right. So.
Mike, can you share the bullet points?
Oh yeah, I'll certainly. It's 3 items. Let's see. Share screen. All right. So the 3 items that are being covered in that letter was high-speed wired and mobile broadband deployment assistance. The second one is to create and adopt a distributed electric generation plan. And the third was on regional outdoor recreation, tourism, clearinghouse, and portal. So those are the 3 items that we came up with. Some of those are pulled directly from the CEDS. And I know the broadband one came from there. So those are the 3 items that we pitched for the CARES Grant Act when they asked for more details, and within a day, that was what we were able to produce. Francis, any other comment on that, or any questions from the members about these 3 items? High speed, mobile broadband, distributed electric generation plan, and a regional outdoor recreation, tourism, clearinghouse, and portal. Okay. Well, if the funding comes through, we'll certainly have much more to update on, because then we'll be looking about how we would pursue these 3 target items.
Yeah, I have a question though, Mike. What is it?
Sure.
What is the thinking behind the outdoor recreation tourism clearinghouse?
Yes, Francis, do you want to take that one? Francis, are you on? Francis? Okay, let me stop sharing the screen here.
I can get an update next time. It's fine.
Yeah, I'm not sure where Francis, you might have stepped out for a second, but yeah, so I didn't put the letter together. There is some, I can actually share the letter with the group. That's what I can do. It has a lot of the details behind it. So that's an easy solution I can do to provide you some more context. And I'll go ahead and do that. All right. I seem to have got myself mixed up. Oh, here we go, stop share. All right. So that concludes our grant applications that we're going for funding.
All right. Yeah, that'd be great if you could share that. I think that would be interesting from just a standpoint of understanding what those points are all about.
Sorry, Mike, did you need me? I had to run away for a second.
Yes, Francis, there were some questions about the outdoor recreation tourism clearinghouse.
Yes, so there was the distraction. I heard this crazy buzzing noise. I couldn't tell where it was coming from. It was really loud, and it was following me around. So it turns out my car key was buzzing like crazy. I don't know what's going on. So, okay, what was the question?
The question was, Alicia Scales had some question about, if you could go into more detail about the outdoor recreation /tourism clearinghouse and portal.
Yes, yes, yes. Mhm.
Just give me an idea. I was just wondering what the thinking is behind that bullet point.
Yeah, the thinking behind that, Lisa, is, we've seen unprecedented demand on our open spaces. In this era where people are, understandably loath to recreate indoors. And there really isn't, one of the big impediments to better using those spaces for economic purposes is a lack of information. We don't really have all the information in one place. We have fantastic park systems and other outdoor amenities, but if you don't know about it, then you can't use it. And we have seen earlier in the year some overcrowding at some facilities. We really think that the region's park system is a gem. Parks, whether they're woods or beaches, rivers, could also be more developed ones. And we're trying to bring it all into one location so it's easy to use, easy to find, good information about openings and closures, trails, all of that in one place. And the data generally does exist. It's just hasn't been put into one repository.
Okay, got it. So that includes the tourism district offices.
Yes, it would basically be, we're starting off with trails, but I imagine we would expand it to include beaches, potentially private sector outdoor venues such as wineries and so on.
Okay, thank you.
Interesting. Then since we still have Francis, I'm kind of curious, especially since you're talking about space, with regards to the grant for distributed generation, since space is always an issue with that, but I was just kind of curious your approach with that.
Well, that is really, we're really at the starting line on that, Tracy, because we don't have the answers for that. We know there's been a lot of discussion over the last several years about microgrids in Connecticut, but microgrids obviously are harder to build. There's a lot more infrastructure there. There's been a lot of discussion about residential solar. People have looked at it maybe as a way to run back their electric bill, but not necessarily looked at it for increasing resilience in the region's economy. So we really want to take a step back and look at all available power sources and figure out a plan to have more distributed generation across the region so that we are more resilient and more environmentally sustainable.
So if at any point, if the group would like, I can actually arrange for one of the directors from our distributed generation group to address the group, because it's often easy to jump in and to go there. And I think it would help to have it prefaced with what some of the requisites, the prerequisites are, what would need to be set up before even getting to that step.
That's I really appreciate that invitation, and we will follow up with you.
Okay.
Hey, Tracy, I think that would be a great idea, because certainly Norwalk, with its two taxing districts, which run their own local utility companies, are pursuing inquiries along those lines.
Yeah, I think we've done a lot of inquiries on these. And I think people are often surprised at, number one, not so much probably in the northern part of the state, but in the southern portion of the state, real estate is always a huge issue. And so that's kind of ties into kind of the basis for what's needed. But whenever Francis and one or you guys want, I'll definitely work with you guys to set that up.
Great.
Okay. I think that's all we have for the grants. Yeah.
All right. Why don't we move to the next topic, the CEDS updates.
Yes, the CEDS, Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy, the backbone to our WCEDD. It has all our goals and our strategies for how we want to see our region move forward economically. And we're approaching to the time when we have to do our 5-year update, which kind of is a bigger update than kind of the annual tracking that we do. So this year we're tracking we have a number of indicators to see how our region is doing under our various goals. And we have been updating that data. We were hoping to have it all completed for today. We do not. We're realizing that some of our methods needed to be improved for how we calculate the data. And then a number of them actually require us interviewing and speaking with all the municipalities on these topics. And we don't have the staff time right now to do those individual surveys and discussions for various topics. Oh, Rudy has just joined. Greetings, Rudy. We're currently on the SEDS update portion of the agenda.
Thank you. Sorry. Apologies for late.
No problem. All right. So the stats. There are some stats I'd like to share with you, though, in the meantime, that I think are fairly interesting. And one of the stats that was dug out, which wasn't even an item for our indicators, was talking about the number of people that are working from home now compared to before COVID. And so the stat that the state is providing, it was reported that 60% of people are working from home or were working from home during the height of COVID, or reporting to be working from home. So maybe it's a mix. But the initial number, back in 2017, that number was 5%. So we have a drastic, I mean, obviously we knew a lot of people working from home, but that's a drastic number. So something that's just a kind of interesting observation that we had. We also noticed a huge decline in our numbers for people commuting using transit, taxi, or walking or cycling, or working from home. The initial number back in 2019 was 21%. And that 2019 number, actually, that reflects, the census data is always a bit behind. So that's actually the 2017 stat. And the 2018 stat was a 10% drop. And we're not sure why would that present itself? This is across the entire West Cog region. So they're saying there's a 10% drop in folks that are taking alternate forms of transportation to work. It might be that they changed some statistic or something. It just seems like a very large increase for a 10% drop. So we had to actually investigate that further. And yeah.
Mike, I was just a question on that. If you drive your car, that's not in that percentage. Is that the idea?
That's right. It's kind of the alternate modes of travel, of commuting.
Yeah, I mean, I could imagine some of that is, in fact, frustration with the quality of service on Metro North. Those of us down here along the coast on the main line, I've seen 5-minute, 10-minute, 15-minute increases in the scheduled time into New York City that suddenly, or not suddenly, but makes driving attractive.
Right.
So just a thought.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I'll take note of that, pass it on to our analysts.
Just a question, please.
Yeah, Hal.
That's a temporary phenomena in terms of people working from home. How relevant is it to our SEDS, though?
You're referring to that 60% number that I shared about working from home?
I mean, it's going to have an effect. It's going to be a carryover. It's going to be higher than it was before the SEDS, but 60% is a little out of whack, I think.
Yeah, so that's the stat that I was just sharing. It's actually not part of our indicators.
Oh, okay. All right, good.
Just kind of something we found. But the numbers for the alternate modes of transportation do include people who report that they work from home. So I'm sure we'll see the alternate modes of transportation increase when they report 2020 numbers, which will be in like 3 years, as the census kind of moves along on how they do data. So, go ahead.
This is Tom, and one of the things we came across from USDOL tracking the telework, those numbers are really high. They just started tracking in May, and they were at about 38% of people they surveyed, and it came down to 24% in the last month, which might have been August or September. I'm not sure which month it was. It's still a high number, but not quite that high.
Right, yeah. I will pass that along to our analysts. These are kind of our preliminary discoveries and
Well, and the other thing is that links back to the grant topics we were talking about, and that's the broadband capability. When all of a sudden, even if it's just 30% or 25% are working from home, up from 5% in 2017, the demand on connectivity is huge.
Right.
And if again, the part of the state I'm in is a little better blessed with broadband coverage, widespread, but I imagine as you get a little further north, it's maybe a little more challenging.
Tom, could I ask you to share the source for that, the stat you gave from 38 to 24? What was the?
Yep, it was 35% in May and 24% in August. That came from the US DOL, BLS, and they have a product called the Economics Daily. And every day they come out with a new interesting stat. And that's where it came from.
Great, thank you. All right, I'll pass that along. All right. So yes, we'll send you an update once we have these stats figured out. But we're currently realizing that some of our approaches require a bigger dig, so we're not yet able to report them. So we'll send that via email.
The trying to track who's working from home is that if your employer is based out of the state, you're not going to be counted in the employment numbers for the state, because people working from home can work for an employer that's located globally, essentially, but particularly the tech companies are allowing people to go full-time work from home, and that's going to kind of be a game changer in terms of tracking employment.
Right. I'm based in New York right now, so I'm not counted. Okay. All right. That concludes my SEDS update. Any other questions?
Yeah, Mike, I should mention that one of the EDA grants we applied to, the CARES money that will come in next year for the following 2 calendar years, one aspect is retooling the SEDS for a post-COVID economy. And of course, we understand some things will go back closer to where they were. But I do think this region has a major question mark insofar as one of the reasons why it's done so well the last few decades is proximity to New York City, commute into the city. And as we've seen, the jobs that were most able to telework were many of those jobs. And the question is, what's the future if the New York City commute is not as important as it was? So, what does that mean in terms of our economic base? What does it mean in terms of our infrastructure investments? It's pretty clear we need better internet connectivity, but what does it mean in terms of transportation? A lot of the fare box revenue from Metro North has evaporated. If it continues to stay evaporated, how do we fund that system? What do we do about our highway system? Have travel patterns changed? And so on and so forth.
Thank you, Francis. Okay. Any other questions or comments about SEDS update?
Yeah, one, Mike, and that is, when do you expect to be able to release something to this group in terms of the update? Or are we talking about the next meeting or what?
I think within the end of by the end of October or maybe early November, we should be able to have the stats available.
Okay, thank you.
Sure thing.
Okay, how about brownfields?
Yes. So this kind of just popped up out of nowhere for us. Not I'd say nowhere, but an opportunity came up to join a program called the Connecticut Brownfield Initiative. It's through UConn. They use professors and the courses they run there to teach students about the brownfield grant process and how to write grants, and they work closely with the professors, and they find communities that have potential brownfield sites that could have assessments done on them to eventually lead to remediation of those sites. So I knew that there's some towns in our in the Housatonic Valley region have a number of brownfields, and if they might have interest. I went around and collected some potential brownfield sites or sites that we think might be brownfields and passed it up. We got into the CBI programs. They assigned us a number of students, and they've been working on applications in Danbury for a number of properties. And initially we were looking at Reading, but the property in Reading was too far along in the process. And we also provided some properties from Stanford, but those properties did not meet, we didn't have enough details about whether they were actually brownfields or not. So that was kind of like, that's what we've been up to in regards to brownfields, but it got us thinking about, is there a need or a demand for brownfield support in Westcog? And this is really a question we want to bring up to the COG. You know, is this something of value for those communities? And what would that look like for Westcog? You know, there's a number of approaches. We might just provide, you know, these are the grants that you can apply for and send the appropriate contacts grants so they can get brownfield access to those grants, those grant programs. Or it might be something like they do offer a program called the Revolving Grants Loan Program, where we, Westcog, would kind of handle a grants loan program for our communities. And these are obviously some pretty big decisions because this would be starting a brand new program. But we've been starting to get into brownfields, and I guess I'm kind of curious from the WCEDD folks. I think one of our goals is reducing brownfields in our region. I'm kind of curious about, you know, how big of a topic is this for you, or if you know of some sites that you would like to see remedied or things like that. Oh, Rudy, I see you're speaking. You're muted.
Yeah, sorry. I was asking about a definition of a brownfield. For example, we have a small area in town where there are heating fuel oil tanks that have leaked over the last 50 years. That area is contaminated. Would that qualify as a brownfield for redevelopment?
It wouldn't qualify for brownfield grants, but it would qualify. There are other grants for like underground storage.
No, these aren't underground. They're above ground. It's an oil company, a local oil company with above ground sizable tanks, but right in the center of town. They've been there for 100 years. But the tanks over the years had leaked, and it's never been cleaned up.
Okay.
So the communities in our area, I'm sure a lot of people have similar, like an old gas station or whatever it was, that could provide economic development, but do they qualify for brownfield grants? Or what programs are there available? Maybe we could distribute that.
Right.
Because we also, by the way, have an old gas station on Route 33, just north of the Wilton line, that has sat dormant for 30 years.
So, Rudy, there is a federal definition of a brownfield.
Okay.
And it's a real property, the expansion, redevelopment, or reuse of which may be complicated by the presence or potential presence of a hazardous substance, pollutant, or contaminant. However, there are a couple of pages of exclusions. So that we have to actually look at every single site to determine whether that qualifies.
Okay. So do we ask our member communities to send in those sites for an evaluation for repurposing?
I have a comment for that. The program, the CBI program in Yukon does an inventory. They have an inventory program in the spring. And if we want to wait till then, we could do the inventory, survey all the towns, and collect all the sites in the Westcog region and have an official brownfield and contaminated site inventory.
And it's up to everyone else. I don't know how anyone else feels.
You know, I've heard that most of the brownfield sites in the state were identified already. I just don't understand why it's up to a conference that's going to be coming up soon to do that. For instance, you know, in New Milford, town above us, which is part of the region, they have a waterfront, meaning the riverfront area, which has to be remediated Some of it they've done. There was a brass plant there that pretty much done, but they have a lot of other areas that they like to develop. So that would be included in that, but it's probably already identified, I would think. I just don't know.
I don't know, Harold.
So Hal, I think what happens there is you have a number of sites that are suspected to be brownfield sites, and those have been inventoried. And so I don't know, because when I've worked with the folks from CBI, they have an inventory of sites they can identify as potential brownfield sites, and they have to go and dig out from either Deep's archives or from town records. Has this site been assessed? Is it confirmed as a brownfield site? What are those contaminations on the site? So without the assessments, I think they can't identify if it's truly a brownfield. Francis was talking about those exclusions about whether it's one thing or another based on the contaminants. So I think they have a list of potential sites, but not necessarily inventory as official brownfields or not.
Well, your suggestion that you go to the individual towns and ask them to identify sites seems to make sense to me.
Yeah.
And is it possible that new sites also can be added? I mean, even if an inventory process has happened or is happening, I'm just wondering if, that list gets refreshed every so often.
I can look into that. My gut instinct is that a lot of the brownfields are from, they're from the past when I think there were less regulations. And so you had some really contaminated sites. But certainly there are incidents that occur on a given site that may make it a contaminated site.
Yeah, I
So
mean,
I don't know how they
that's
refresh or not.
that's a good point, Lisa. So, an initial cut is sites generally a municipality knows of that are underutilized that they would like to see redeveloped, and there's a suspicion it's not been redeveloped because of contamination. There may just be fear and not reality, because it's expensive to do the testing and remediation. And our current environmental liability statutes, although the new Transfer Act will help address that, put the burden on the new owner. So nobody has historically wanted to buy those sites and take on unknown liability. Now, if a site is currently in use, it would not necessarily be considered a brownfield. But what happens when that business relocates or folds? That site then comes up on the market. And so there may be industrial sites in the region right now that will qualify as brownfields in the future, but are currently being used, and we aren't aware of the contamination.
Yeah, so you just put some color to that for me, Francis, but I'm just thinking in this environment of COVID and with the economy the way it is, I don't know if businesses are actually moving or maybe closing even, I wonder if the reevaluation processes would make sense for certain locations. I don't know.
There's another factor too, and that's the Transfer Act is being looked at very, very deeply right now and by the DEEP, and that could have an effect on the brownfield question as well.
Yeah, that was part of the special session, and it was modified, Hal.
Yeah, I know, but I mean, it wasn't modified as much as people would like it to have been, but it was modified in a positive way.
Okay. Thank you, Hal. Is there any other additions or comments about the Westcog Exploring Brownfield inventories or kind of a program?
Yes, Mike, this is Francis again. So as the members are probably aware, there's a October 28th deadline for applications to EDA for grant funding for brownfield assessment and remediation. And we're working with UConn on that on several sites. One of the questions, a longer term kind of strategic question for WCEDD and the COG is, to what extent do we want to develop our own brownfields program? 3 COGs in the state at least run brownfields programs in-house with revolving loan funds, grant assistance with a lot of the details, the technicalities regarding assessment remediation. And the towns have found it to be, from what I understand, to be quite helpful. The difference, of course, is that our region has historically had much higher development pressure than other parts of the state, and we don't have the large number of underutilized, unused factories and mills and similar properties. So it's a question to think about. Obviously not for this grant cycle, but potentially for next year's grant cycle. These are annual grants. We may want to think about this.
Thank you, Francis. Any other comments on the Brownfield program? Okay.
Where are we
Yes.
going? What is the direction here?
So currently, WestCog is actively working with CBI now to develop some applications for a few sites in Danbury to be assessed.
Can you do me a
And-
favor, Mike? Can you
Yes.
put together like a summary of where we're at, the current list as it exists, what the current applications, the sites they're for, and what we may want to do in the future? As far as reviewing your list on a municipality by municipality basis
Sure.
and notifying us about brownfields that may not be on the list,
Okay.
if everyone agrees with that. I don't
Yep,
know.
sounds good to me.
All right.
It's a good next step.
And I would think we'd want to share that with the COG leadership as well. So maybe in the interest of time, we should move to the next topic here, long-term recovery update.
Sure thing. So we have our WestCog is active in the long-term recovery efforts through the Department of Emergency Management and Homeland Security regions. WestCog is in 2 regions, Region 5 in the north, and then Region 1 in the south. And each region is trying to identify unmet needs across various sectors. And in summary, the north has been very active to the point where their working groups are concluding they have identified all the unmet needs for some of their working groups and are ready to submit some of those lists to the state for review. The south is having a slower start and they're having a hard time identifying members to attend those meetings. And so there's been kind of like, look, they're seeking, if you're in the southern towns, for folks to participate. John, I know you mentioned something about, you mentioned being involved in a cultural, like something about culture. There's a culture and arts and recreations working group.
Yes.
So if you're interested in learning more about the long-term recovery effort done by Department of Emergency Management and Homeland Security, they're looking for participants in,
Sure.
in the southern towns. I'd be happy to share that with you. I think they'd be happy to have you.
That would be awesome. Yeah.
By some guidance. Okay. So I'll
Thank
share
you.
that. There's an economic recovery meeting on October 21st at 1 p.m. So if you feel like you're in these southern towns, this is for the WestCog region, it's Wilton and Weston, and south of that are our southern communities. So if you're serving in those towns and you'd like to be involved, you can join this meeting. It's Wednesday, October 21st at 1 p.m. I'll send the details out for
Mike,
those that can make it.
it's Rudy. Is it fair to share Region 5's work to give an example to Region 1?
So we're fortunate that we have those communications going, and in fact, a lot of the effort by Region 5 has driven the structure for Region 1, how they share and coordinate their meetings. Yes, that's a good approach, and we've been trying to practice that.
One of the challenges here,
Yep.
I should mention, has been, at least in Region 1, there's been a concern or some questions regarding, well, we can identify unmet needs, but what is the follow through at the state level? Where are the resources to address them? We don't currently have an answer for that question, but we are planners, and we believe it is best to be prepared and have plans for when resources are made available. And we are somewhat concerned that those who identify needs when resources are available will have those needs met, and those who do not identify needs will be perceived as not having needs to meet. So we do want participation from the entire WestCog region.
Right. Thank you, Francis. And Francis, I want to ask you too, I don't know much about this myself, and if you could, maybe you could potentially elaborate. The state has hired some consultants to assist with an economic component of long-term recovery.
Yes.
Are you able to speak on that?
Yes, so that is off to a good start. The state actually requested that the COGs collectively submit a funding application to hire the Global Resilience Institute, which is based out of Northeastern University, in conjunction with the McChrystal Group, a private sector consulting group. And they have begun a process running through the end of this year to develop economic recovery plans. It's somewhat different than the identification of unmet needs. This is more long-term planning. And they have a very compressed time frame. Their work must be complete by December 31st.
We lost Francis.
Yes, Francis, you're breaking up.
Federal.
Last thing I heard was the December 31st deadline for them trying to produce their economic recovery reports. It sounds like it's long-term.
Yeah, if you don't want to be shared, let us know, but otherwise we'll be sharing your information and they may reach out to you to hear from you.
Oh, I understand. So West Coast will be sharing our contact information with the WCEDD and the COG
Yeah, I mean,
members.
my perspective on this is, we want to serve the region. Our region does have a somewhat different economy than much of the rest of the state. And it often gets left out of discussions. Our needs some are shared, some are different. And the more people we can have talking to GRI, the more our region's needs and its future will show through at the statewide level.
Got it. Thanks, Francis. Any questions about long-term recovery? Okay, thank you.
So we move to expanding membership. Who else should be on this call?
Yes, thanks, Jim. Someone reached out. It was Angela Wong, and someone was asking if she's part of the WCEDD, and I realized I haven't reviewed the membership qualifications. Who's on, who's not. How do we, invite new members? Angela is currently an active member because I found a list of membership that we use, and it's based on sector. So we have a number of vacant positions from various sectors, but I'm kind of curious, before I jump into that list, do we feel like we're underrepresented in certain areas? And if so, what? And do you have people in mind that we could invite to broaden the depth of this group? That's kind of the question I wanted to raise.
Well, it seems like there might be, I don't know what the list of profile, that currently exists. I mean, you say sectors, but if I understand well enough, that there are other profiles besides sectors, right, for representation. Sure. Maybe I'm not understanding that correctly, but geography. I don't know if that's important.
It is. Geography is important. Yeah.
Yeah. So we've got, there's a couple of towns. I'm not saying that every town needs to be represented, but I'm just wondering if, more representation from the north side of the COG could be here. But I do think sharing the list of sectors is important before, just to help narrow or focus our thinking.
Okay. All right. So here's the list that I found. This is on a Google sheet. and I'm happy to share the link to this. So we have, for some sectors now, we have chief elected officials. We have that covered. State government, we have that vacant. We don't have any representation from state government. Local economic development agency. I'm not sure who would even fall into that. You know, there was one in the Fairfield County Economic Development. They were the Business Council. Gosh, I don't remember the name anymore. They dissolved. Chambers of Commerce, we have Norwalk and Danbury here today. They have finance, we have as vacant. Let's see. Technology, we have Jackie Lightfield. Professional services, I have as vacant. Public utilities, we have Tracy Alston. Small and medium businesses, we have someone listed as Michael Savagew from Noteworthy Chocolates.
Yeah. Hey, Mike, can I ask a question?
Yes.
Just going back up the list on finance. We're looking for someone who represents more of a regional finance position versus an individual municipality. Is that what we're looking for here?
I'd have to dig into that.
Because would it be worth, I don't know if GFOA has I think they have an office somewhere in our region. Is that what we're looking for?
No, the
finance officers of America.
Yeah, Rudy, the finance was conceived of as a representative of the region's financial sector.
I would have thought Rob Malazzi qualifies for that.
I was thinking.
He does.
All right, updated. All right, that's good to know.
Good.
So updating kind of these old documents, you know.
And Jim, it's Rob Malazzi. I don't even see my name on that list. so thank you.
We just got added, believe it or not.
He's in. He's fine.
Thank you for volunteering, Rob.
Your lips to God's ears. Or something.
I was feeling a little hurt. Thank you.
All right. Professional services, we have as vacant.
You know, the first time around, Mike, we had a guy by the name of Joe, and I don't remember the exact pronunciation of his last, Arcola, I believe. And he's a small business, something or other. He was very, very active.
Arcolano.
Yeah, he was very active, and he led a lot of the discussion. I'm just wondering why he is not included in this list now.
He is on the list.
He is on the list.
Yeah, he's on the. He's now the director of
There he is.
the Small Business Development Center.
Yeah, yeah.
And this is Brian Griffin, by the way. If you could add me for the Norwalk Chamber, that'd be great.
You got it.
Thank you.
And Mike, could you correct my contact information?
Yes. Update. We have it. I'll just have to dig it out. Okay. Very good.
Mike, have you reached out to Heather for Stanford Chamber?
I have not, no.
Okay.
But I will make a note to do so.
Her last name is Kavanaugh.
Thank you. Francis, you got a blender or something going.
That's not me.
All right. I'm gonna mute Francis.
His car must be buzzing him again.
He's got a home project going on here. There he is. More.
Sounds like he's in the dentist chair or something.
Yeah, his house. He has a lot of projects going on in his house, so he.
That's brownfield remediation you hear
That's
there.
right. That's an offsite. Francis, I muted you, so feel free to let yourself back in. If you
Oh,
need
sorry
to.
about that.
All right, back to the list here.
Yeah, Mike, I want to get you a name for the tourism. I think it's important to have that
Yeah.
representation on here.
Excellent. Do you have the name available now, or?
I don't know. Well,
Okay,
I'll look. I'm gonna look on my list.
Gotcha.
See if
I
I
can send
can.
out an email with this list and make a request from the group. So you kind of see it and come up with ideas to share with me, and I can reach out to those folks and make sure they get invited.
In the same light, as I look at professional services, you know, all of our towns are audited by somebody, usually more local firms, more localized than the Big Four or something like that. But that said, with Deloitte and E&Y having a big presence in Stamford, maybe we should look at them as well.
Okay. Deloitte and what was the second one?
E&Y.
Ernst & Young, PwC, and KPMG all in Stamford.
Yeah. It's an E, I'm sorry, E and Ernst & Young is who they really are.
Okay. I will send an email out. It's kind of tough for me to capture all that. Oh, you can write in the chat. Write in the chat. That'd be great. And I can just capture it that way. I'm sure I'm misspelling a lot. I don't want the Google search to throw me off. Biotech, press and media, philanthropy, talent acquisition and staffing, communities of concern or disadvantaged groups, and then community organizations.
What does that mean? Community organizations. What is that? What is that?
I was hoping you guys might know. To be honest, I'm not entirely
YMCA is
sure.
an example, for instance.
What would be an example, Francis? Sorry.
The YMCA is an example.
Well, what about the United Way?
United Way, yeah.
I was going to
that's
say
a-
United Way could be for disadvantaged groups.
Okay.
Oh, well, I have a name for United Way. Let me just get it right.
There's Bridget Fox for Western Connecticut United Way.
Well, Bridget's actually handling the children. Gosh, I just blanked. Oh my gosh, not Head Start, but so Bridget's actually in a different role. She's still under United Way of Western, but I would think you'd want someone like Isabel, who is the acting president right now, while Kim is working on a special project.
Yeah,
Yeah, the other name that I have is Sandra Farrer. She might also be a good one. She works really closely with Isabel.
Excellent. All righty. Well, I think we got a good list there. I'll send the list out to the group so we can, if you any other additions, and I can go reach out to those folks. And of course, if there's a sector that's missing, or when I say sector, I kind of mean like a type of representation, I should say. Feel free to reach out and we can consider some other folks to add. So that's all I have for expanding membership. Any questions? Okay.
No, all set.
Any other business? We're past the hour here, so.
I just want to report that DMV said yesterday that they were all caught up on their backlog and they're now on a normal processing for registrations, driver's license renewals, and all of the other stuff. Still by appointment only, though.
I can report, believe it or not, I can report a positive in-person experience at the DMV on Monday. I had to renew my driver's license. I had an appointment. I was in and out of there in essentially 15 minutes. So
awesome.
Very good.
Good for the DMV for getting something right.
Yes.
I had the opposite experience. I just renewed my license. I had an appointment. By the time I got there, time I left, it was about an hour and 15 minutes.
Yeah, I'm with you, Bri. I'm not convinced yet they're caught up because I know what I'm waiting for.
Hour 15 is good.
Full disclosure, I took advantage of Monday being senior day.
Ah.
You only take appointments if you're over 65. So
See, Brian,
Nice.
you have a lot to look forward to.
That's right, Rob.
all right. It looks like our next meeting will be after the first of the year. So see how the holidays unfold in the midst of COVID. But
Right.
Halloween next up. We just put out a press release locally here on at least how we suggest from a government standpoint how you might celebrate Halloween. I'm not sure how much obedience we'll get from that, but Sarah and I will monitor that from afar, I hope. So, but that said, you start looking at the way people traditionally celebrate holidays. We got through the High Holy Day, the Jewish High Holy Days, in some creative ways. Actually, we turned one of our parking lots into a drive-in theater during the summer, and with a group called the Remarkable Theater, which is based on the I'm sorry, I always remember the wrong name. The Pathfinder Theater in Richfield. And that's worked beautifully. And one of the synagogues, essentially, and so in-car radio sound transmissions. We weren't bothering the neighbors in any significant way. And so it was great for drive-in movie, but then we used it for Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur activities for a particular synagogue, and that's fine. But Halloween a little more challenging, and then I think the annual turkey trot in this Fairfield Westport is canceled just because it draws about 5,000 people to run for a few miles before they eat their turkey. But so things like that. Even tree lighting, I was starting to think about that. We have an annual tree lighting ceremony outside Town Hall, and I'm not sure how comfortable we are with even that sort of gathering just yet. Anyhow, January 14th is our next meeting of this group. So that's.
On that note, happy holidays.
Yeah, indeed.
Thank you.
All
Healthy,
Halloween
healthy.
is elevated to the level of Christmas.
Stay safe.
Thank you. Thanks,
Take
Mike.
care, everybody.
Thank
Take
you.
care, everybody.
All right.
Thanks.
Take care, everyone. Be safe.
Bye.
Take
Bye.
care.
I gotta go in there. Oh.